Hello, I'm the developer of Inventory Framework plugin, and today I'm going to be discussing ability system integration, the new native gas supports, and the item ability driver. Most of this, the last two only apply to 2.10 and above. The ability system integration is more or less just discussing how to integrate your own ability system or making your own custom gas integration. To begin, I would suggest reading most of this. The most important section is up here, just noting that IFP was not built with any specific ability system in mind, and that has led to it being very easy to integrate with essentially any ability system. And in fact, the item ability driver is the closest thing that IFP has to an quote unquote ability system. So to begin, if you do not want to use gas, you can follow these steps up here, and that will remove the gas dependency that is in the U plugin. This section covers how to connect IFP with your ability system and vice versa. Most of the time, it's going to be through the object and drivers system, which you can find under classes and settings. And going into here, all item object and AC item driver. And you can read more about that over here. Then primarily it's very simple to integrate your ability system with IFP, and then it's just getting a reference to an item in some way, and then you'll have access to virtually anything, or just the inventory component. To help give more of an example of integrating IFP with an ability system, we're going to be taking a look at the native gas support that is in 2.10. And just a gentle reminder, this is just one way of implementing gas. For my personal project, I needed something different. So for my project, I have made my own implementation, but again, through the the object system. To begin, there are three classes that essentially look the exact same. You'll find the gas module under the Inventory Framework plugin, source, and you'll find all the modules over here. And we are looking for IFP underscore gas. And you'll find three classes that all look very same. They are just holding a T map to whatever they are associated with. So gameplay effect references has a T map of gameplay effects. This one has abilities, and this one has attribute sets. And then there are tag events, which are just events for granting and removing. If we take a look at an example here, the cool gun is going to be granting the jump ability whenever the item is equipped, and removing it whenever it is unequipped. And we'll be taking a look at that in a moment. To use this system, you need to add the gas helper component, which you can just find under here. This component has a very simple tag event system, which is meant to help filter out when to grant and remove abilities, attributes, and effects. These events can be called from anywhere by simply broadcasting tag event activated. If we take a look at the delegate on tag event broadcasted, you can see it is calling a function get items for event, and then it is calling process items. Don't worry about all of this if you are a Blueprint programmer, because the majority of this is Blueprint overwritable. For example, here, Blueprint native events. And you can also make a Blueprint version of this gas helper. So you can override a good amount in here. To process an item, you need to call the process item function and pass in an event. and it will call 6 functions. We can take a look here. For example, when we equip an item, we can see we are just calling process item on the item that was just equipped. We can take a look in here, and it is simply trying to grant item abilities and remove them, grant item attributes and remove, and applying item effects and also removing. If you want to handle more events, by default, the helper component only handles 3 events. You can override the bind default events to increase the number of events the component automatically handles. So we can take a look here, bind default delegates, and it is just binding these 2 delegates to these 2 functions. Just keep in mind that the gas helper is a very simple implementation. It is not meant to be a very complex implementation. Like I've stated above, this is just one way of implementing gas. So if we take a look here, the gas helper will automatically listen to when the component is called. So we can place a breakpoint here, and we can see in the ability system, I am not granting the jump ability by default. We can press play here, and we can see we have 1 ability handle. We can get that ability instance, and we can see here we do have the ability character jump. And if we take a look here, try activate ability by class, and if we place a breakpoint in here, and I activate it, we can see I have activated the ability. And if I unequip the item, I can no longer jump. Next up, we're going to take a look at the item ability driver. This is just a regular driver, but it has been quote-unquote fancified a little bit to look and behave very similar to gas abilities. So you have check and applying a cooldown, activating, ending, and canceling an ability, and checking tags for activation and so forth. It's not connected to gas because gas has a few issues that are discussed here. But in exchange, we are basically creating a driver that looks and behaves very, very similar to gas. And it's meant to basically look exactly like a gas ability. We can even take a look at activating a item ability. If you go into the example project under the inputs at the very bottom, we can see try activate equipped item ability. This is just a shortcut function to basically do this. And you can call just try activate item ability. So the main issues that that we're trying to get around in gas is that instance per execution does not seem to have replication support anymore. Changing ownership of an instance ability does not seem to be supported. Remember, drivers have the ability to follow the item wherever it goes. And having a gas ability treat an item as its owner requires a lot of work. As in, an ability that would use instance per actor would only ever have 1 instance created for the owner of the inventory component. But you might want it to be something like instance per item. So you could only have an instance made for an item, but only 1 per item. So you could have 2 stacks of apples, activate some kind of ability associated with those apples, but in gas, you would be limited to just 1 because they seem to be deprecating support for instance per execution. And enabling this in native gas is quite a lot of work. I have some success doing it in my personal project, but it required so many steps that I'm sure that I have broken something somewhere. So to simplify things, we're just creating our own class that is meant to get around these issues and look as similar to gas as possible. The scope for ability drivers are very small to reduce complexity and just provide the basics of an ability system. So when you do try to activate them, they will always activate on the server. And if you want some event to happen on clients, you need to send an RPC. There is no prediction or any fancy stuff like that that gas has. So again, try to use gas whenever you can, and only use this driver if the above limitations are preventing you from making your ability. Then there are some steps on how to create a new item ability. I do always advise that you make your own global parent. So if we go here, blueprint, and look up item ability, you'll see both the item driver and the object. And I do suggest you make your own item ability parent that your abilities are then children of, and the same with the item ability object. If we take a look inside of here, you can see this shares a lot of the same interface as gas. But also remember that since drivers are included in the external object system, you will get all of the same events that the item gets. For example, when the item count is updated or the item is destroyed or something like that. To then add the item ability to the item, you can just add another entry into your object and drivers. We have here item ability. The activation query is currently just unused because if we take a look, it is meant to hook into your tag system. For example, Gas has tags on their ability system component. Lots of projects have started using their own tagging system and so forth. So you would override this function and pass in your tag system. And then you'll be able to use this activation query. Then you have to fill in the item driver. You will get an error if this item driver is not a child of item ability. There you go. And if we put it back, it will get fixed. And here's where you set your quote-unquote instancing policy. In IFP, it's called construction policy. And you can decide if it's going to follow the item. You can give it a tag so you can easily fetch this specific ability. If you are going to start using this, I would suggest adding a tag system into your abilities. And just like Gas has ability tags, you could add that here and also add those here. Or potentially start overriding the post edit change property to just automatically get the tags from the item driver to automatically populate this. The only two functions in your item objects that you'll want to override is potentially allow new instance if you want to use the custom option. You will also want to override loosely check can activate ability. If we take a look at the code comment for this, this is basically a function that allows you to preemptively prevent an ability from getting constructed from an RPC being sent and so forth, just to have failed events. So you are trying to reduce failed activations. Allows you to loosely check if an ability can be activated. This should always assume that the ability doesn't exist yet, so do not check for the ability's cooldown in here. This is primarily meant for things like, is the player dead? Or other type of conditions that would help reduce the amount of drivers being constructed, then possibly being instantly destroyed if the ability failed to activate. This can help reduce RPCs to minimize network traffic. It is also common in Gas to pass some sort of data to the activated ability. This can be extremely useful for when you are playing as a client, want to activate an ability, but send some data to the server, and that is the driver payload struct. This is a optional payload to pass into getItemDriver and various other functions. These properties are completely unused by the plugin. This means that the struct is 100% safe to add, remove, or modify for each project's needs. So one of the first things that you might want to do when you start working with the ability system, since this is the most common use case for the payloads, is to start modifying the payload structs. Do keep in mind that in Unreal Engine 5.5, instanced structs are going to be added to the engine and are probably not going to be experimental anymore. So this might get replaced with an instanced struct, which would greatly simplify it, which potentially means you would no longer have to modify the base plugin to make customizations to this payload. That has been it. Thank you for watching. See you in the next one. Bye-bye.